Most annoying celebrity.
Northwest.
Northwest?
Yeah, she irritates the life out of me.
No way.
Let's start with the question nobody wants to ask out loud. At what point does confidence stop being cute and start being concerning? Because for years now, people have been laughing off Northwest's behavior as sassy, bold, or just like her dad. But when you stop watching these moments as isolated clips and instead line them up like puzzle pieces, something much bigger starts to emerge. This isn't random, this isn't a phase, and this definitely isn't accidental. What we're watching is a carefully shaped public image being built in real time by one of the most media-trained families in the world. And at the center of it all is Kim Kardashian. Now, before anyone jumps to conclusions, let's be clear. This conversation is not about blaming a child. North is a kid, period. This is about the adults behind the camera, the choices being made, and the system that North is growing up inside. Because
North, I see you dripped out. Talk to me, how much the pick off? Talk the shades. How much the shade?
I don't know.
You don't know for the shades? Okay, I see the chain. How much for the chain?
I don't know.
I don't know. Okay, I see the shirt. How much for the shirt?
the Kardashian empire doesn't run on vibes, it runs on strategy. Nothing goes public without intention. Nothing gets posted without a reason. And nothing, especially involving their children, happens without calculation. So when Northwest turns 12 and suddenly appears everywhere, yacht birthdays, paparazzi-ready photos, adult silhouettes, full glam, late-night TikToks, influencer environments, that's not coincidence, that's positioning. Let's talk about those birthday photos. A yacht, corset-style outfits, heels, full beat makeup, poses that look more like editorial spreads than childhood memories. People rush to defend it. She likes fashion. She's creative. She's expressive. But here's the thing no one wants to admit. Fashion does not require branding. A child liking fashion looks like experimenting in the mirror, sketching designs, playing dress up at home. What we saw instead was press-ready content, carefully styled, carefully photographed, carefully released. That wasn't North playing, that was North performing. And the most telling part, the cameras were ready. Because Kim Kardashian doesn't accidentally invite the world into her daughter's life, she opens that door intentionally when it serves a purpose. And this is where the bigger picture starts to form. Over the last few years, Kim's cultural grip has shifted. Yes, Skims is still making money. Yes, she's still famous. But the chokehold she once had on pop culture, the obsession, the dominance, that era has cooled. Kylie had her moment, Kim had hers, and now the spotlight needs a new focal point. Enter Northwest. Think about it. North already has a famous last name, built-in controversy, a massive online audience, and a personality that sparks debate. She doesn't blend in, she divides people. And in the Kardashian world, division equals engagement. Now look at the contrast within the same household. Saint, Chicago, and Psalm are presented very differently. They're polished, quiet, soft-focused, protected. North, on the other hand, is loud, confrontational, opinionated, and constantly front-facing. That difference matters, because if this were just about letting kids be kids, the exposure would be equal, but it's not. One child is consistently placed at the center of controversy, while the others are kept safely out of it. That's not coincidence, that's a role assignment. And it mirrors a pattern we've seen before. Kim Kardashian herself didn't become famous by being quiet or agreeable. She became famous by being talked about, criticized, mocked, debated, reduced to headlines, until she flipped that attention into power. And now, we're watching the same formula take shape again. Let's talk about North's public behavior. From a very young age, North has been extremely aware of cameras. Remember the no pictures moments with paparazzi? People laughed it off like it was cute, a toddler scolding grown adults for taking photos. But pause for a second, that awareness doesn't come out of nowhere. Most children don't fully understand cameras, media, or public exposure. North did, early, and instead of shielding her from it, the adults around her normalized it. Fast forward a few years, and North isn't just aware. She's comfortable performing in front of the world, interrupting interviews, calling out adults, critiquing fashion, dragging celebrities, and every single one of those moments recorded, posted, monetized, which brings us to a very uncomfortable realization. North West isn't being introduced to fame gradually, she's being immersed in it, and immersion without boundaries is dangerous, especially when a child is rewarded for shock value. Now let's talk about Kim's role in all of this. Kim isn't a clueless mom who doesn't understand the internet. She's not a passive bystander to her daughter's image. Kim Kardashian is one of the most brand-aware people alive. She knows how narratives form. She knows how clips go viral. She knows how controversy fuels engagement. So when North interrupts her on Instagram Live and asks, "Why do you talk different?" that moment doesn't get deleted. It stays up, it spreads, it becomes a talking point because it works. When
it's your passion and whatever, but I'm like, isn't there a time to do it later once your kids are like more grown and you could like,
I've already done it. I have 4 more months and then I'm done. Why would I stop now?
Courtney, I'd rather be in law school than sitting home all day.
North critiques outfits at the Met Gala, the clips circulate. When North drags Pete Davidson or Jared Leto, the internet eats it up. When North exposes family conversations, engagement spikes. And through it all, Kim stays silent. That silence isn't confusion, it's allowance. Because correcting behavior privately would mean sacrificing content publicly. And content is the Kardashian currency. Now let's address the argument people love to use. Well, Kanye is loud too. She gets it from him. That's convenient, but incomplete. Yes, North is Kanye's daughter, but Kanye's influence has been largely removed from how North is presented online. He's been vocal about not wanting her on social media, about not wanting her turned into content, and yet the content continues, which tells you exactly who's steering this ship. This isn't about North inheriting a personality. This is about North inheriting a platform before she's old enough to understand the cost of it. And the cost doesn't show up immediately. It shows up years later, when boundaries are blurred, when validation becomes external, when attention feels like love. And that's why this story isn't funny anymore. Because once a child becomes a public character, it's very hard to turn that off. And this is only the beginning. Because the moments that truly expose what's going on, the ones that made people uncomfortable, not amused, are coming next. And once we break those down, it becomes impossible to pretend this is just a confident kid. This is a blueprint. And in part 2, we're going to talk about the exact moments that crack the mask. The Met Gala comments, the family exposure, the nanny situation, the special treatment, and the patterns that prove this isn't accidental. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. By now, it should be clear that this story isn't about one viral clip or one funny moment. It's about a pattern. And in part 2, we're going to talk about the exact moments that made people stop laughing. The moments where things crossed from amusing into unsettling. Because once you put all these incidents together, it becomes harder and harder to believe this is just a kid being expressive. Let's start with the moment that quietly shook a lot of people, even if they didn't realize it at the time. The Instagram Live incident. Kim Kardashian is on live, smiling, relaxed, fully in influencer mode. She's talking to her audience the way she always does. Soft voice, upbeat tone, curated warmth. And then North asks her a simple question. Why do you talk different? That wasn't rude, that wasn't playful, that was observant. And the look on Kim's face said everything. She wasn't prepared. She didn't laugh it off easily. She froze. Because North wasn't just asking a question, she was exposing something. She was pointing out the gap between real Kim and camera Kim, and she did it in front of tens of thousands of people. Now ask yourself this, why didn't that moment get cut? Kim edits everything. Kim controls everything. Kim curates every second of her public image, but that clip stayed up because it worked. It went viral. It sparked debate. People shared it. People talked. And North became the headline. That's when the tone shifted. Then came the Met Gala, and this is where things really cracked open. The Met Gala is sacred in celebrity culture. It's serious, it's prestige. Designers, editors, fashion houses, Everyone treats it like a coronation. Kim Kardashian walks in dressed head to toe in pearls, presenting herself as high fashion royalty. And North, she drags it. On camera, on national television. She says it looks like it came from the dollar store. People laughed, memes flew, clips spread. But let's pause for a second. That wasn't a private joke. That wasn't a whisper to her mom. That was a public takedown, delivered confidently, with no hesitation and no correction afterward. And then North doubled down. When Kim tried to explain the look, North shrugged and insulted it again. No boundary, no reminder about context. No, we'll talk later.
She'll be like, Dad is the best. He has it all figured out. He doesn't have a nanny. He doesn't have a chef. He doesn't have security. He lives in an apartment. And she'll start crying. Why don't you have an apartment? I can't believe we don't have an apartment.
They do that at Scott's too. Like, Dad has the best house. Your house sucks. He has the best house. It's not super big. The vibe's better. I feel like everything falls on the parent that's like more involved.
Yeah, but like, we make our own food. That's amazing that you make ramen, you know? Like,
Just silence. And silence, again, is permission. Then there were the other moments people brushed off, but shouldn't have. North calling Pete Davidson's Met Gala look cringe. North dragging Jared Leto. North openly critiquing adults like she's a fashion columnist. And every single time, Kim is either filming, laughing, or saying nothing. This isn't accidental exposure. This is encouraged behavior. And the more it happens, the more normalized it becomes. Now let's talk about the Kendall Jenner incident, because this one really exposed the family dynamics. Kendall shows up to a family event in a dress. Kim apparently didn't like it, but never said anything.
So we used an alias to bid on the Bible so that my name wouldn't be traced back to it. So my daddy gave this book to his best friend to give him some motivation from Jesus. Motivation is when you help to like inspire someone to like do positive things. Like I can motivate you and say, everything's gonna be okay. You're so smart. You've got this, right? That's motivation. Chicago's obviously so little and she doesn't really understand what this means or really what this even is, but I still wanted to share this moment.
To Kendall directly. Instead, North goes up to Kendall and tells her on camera that Kim hated her outfit, and Kim just sits there. Awkward smile, side eye, no correction. Think about what that teaches a child. It teaches her that private opinions can be weaponized publicly, exposure equals power, and there are no consequences for crossing social lines. That's not confidence, that's conditioning. And then there are the stories that didn't circulate as widely, but matter even more. The nanny situation. According to accounts Kim herself has mentioned, North allegedly fired her nanny. There were also reports of aggressive behavior. Now, whether every detail is accurate or not isn't the point. The response is, there were no visible consequences, no narrative about boundaries, no acknowledgement that this behavior was unacceptable. In any other household, that would have been a serious parenting moment, but here, it faded into the background. Then there's the school transportation situation. North allegedly refused to ride with her siblings to school. And instead of learning compromise, instead of being treated like every other child, she was given a separate car, separate rules, separate treatment, separate status. That's not empowerment, that's hierarchy. And hierarchy inside a family, especially one built on image, can do serious damage. Now let's revisit the story Kim told herself, the one people laughed at but shouldn't have. Kim admitted that when Saint was a baby, she would hide in a closet to breastfeed him because North couldn't handle not being the center of attention. A grown woman, hiding from a toddler. And instead of seeing that as a red flag, it became a quirky anecdote. But let's be real, that wasn't cute. That was a warning sign. Because when a child learns early on that adults will rearrange themselves to avoid conflict instead of setting boundaries, that child learns control.
Parties. In this clip, Kanye straight up says his daughter tore up the house just to find a way to be with him.
My daughter ripped up the motherfucking couches in the house to be able to be with me right now. Y'all don't know what's going on, for real. Where y'all TikToking and all that, y'all put up with.
Now let's move to the TikToks. Late night uploads, adult choreography, full glam makeup, lyrics clearly meant for grown audiences. And when Backlash hit, Kim claimed she didn't know. But here's the thing that makes that hard to believe. Kim Kardashian doesn't miss brand-affecting content. She reviews, she approves, she monitors, and even if she truly didn't see it immediately, once it went viral, it stayed up long enough to circulate everywhere. Because again, it worked. The controversy brought attention. The attention brought relevance. And relevance is the lifeblood of this family. Now let's talk about favoritism, because this is where the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. Saint is presented as playful and protected. Chicago is presented as sweet and innocent. Psalm is kept almost entirely offline. North is the lightning rod. She gets the most screen time, the most controversy, the most debate, the most exposure. That's not accidental, that's assignment. Every Kardashian era has one figure who absorbs the chaos, so the rest of the brand stays intact. Kim did it, Kylie did it, and now North is being shaped into that role before she's even a teenager. And this is where the conversation shifts from gossip to concern, because North isn't just being watched, she's being studied, clipped, judged, mocked, praised, dragged, and all of it is permanent. The internet doesn't forget. Screenshots don't disappear, clips don't age with you. And when a child grows up under that level of scrutiny, without boundaries, the consequences don't show up immediately. They show up later. And the most unsettling part? The one person who consistently raised concerns about this, Kanye West, has been shut out of the narrative. His warnings were dismissed as rants, his objections framed as chaos. But now, with hindsight, people are starting to revisit what he said. Because regardless of how people feel about Kanye, one thing is becoming clear. This situation didn't come out of nowhere. And the more North is pushed into the spotlight, the harder it becomes to pretend this is just harmless expression. Because what we're really watching is a child being turned into a public character. And once that line is crossed, it's very hard to go back. And in part 3, we're going to talk about the end game. Why this pattern feels familiar. How Kris Jenner's influence looms over all of it. Why Kim may be repeating history. And what happens when childhood becomes content. Because this story isn't about today, it's about what happens next. This is the part of the story where everything connects. Because once you zoom out far enough, what's happening with North West doesn't look random anymore. It doesn't even look impulsive, it looks familiar. And if you've been paying attention to the Kardashian machine long enough, you already know why. This didn't start with North. It started decades ago with Kris Jenner. Let's be very clear about something. Kris Jenner didn't just manage her children's careers, she engineered them. She understood early on that attention could be transformed into opportunity, and opportunity could be transformed into wealth. Scandal didn't scare Kris. Criticism didn't stop her. Public judgment didn't slow her down. It fueled the brand. Kim didn't become Kim Kardashian by accident. She was shaped, polished, positioned, and sometimes exposed. From magazine covers to breakdowns on reality TV, from personal humiliation to public reinvention, Kim learned one lesson better than anyone else in that family. If the world is watching, you're winning. And that lesson didn't disappear when Kim became a mother. It just evolved. Now look at the similarities. Kim's early fame was divisive. People mocked her, called her talentless, dragged her constantly. But every insult still meant attention, and attention kept the camera rolling. Now look at North. She's divisive. People argue about her behavior. Some find her hilarious, others find her unbearable. And all of that discourse, every tweet, every comment, every reaction video feeds the algorithm. That's not accidental. North West is being raised inside a system where attention is currency, controversy is momentum, and boundaries are flexible if engagement is high enough. And here's the most uncomfortable truth of all. Kim Kardashian knows exactly how this story ends because she lived it. But instead of protecting North from it, she seems to be preparing her for it. Think about what North is learning right now. She's learning that speaking out of turn gets laughs, dragging adults gets applause, confrontation gets attention, and cameras reward chaos. She's learning that the louder the moment, the bigger the response, and the internet reinforces it every single time. Now let's talk about the contrast that says everything. Look at Kylie Jenner and Khloe Kardashian. Kylie doesn't post Stormi performing adult choreography. She doesn't dress her in controversial outfits. She doesn't turn her into content. Khloe doesn't push True into influencer culture. She doesn't film her in situations that spark backlash. She doesn't expose her to constant judgment. Why? Because they watched what happened to Kim. They saw the cost. They saw how fame shaped her identity, her relationships, her self-worth. They saw the pressure, the scrutiny, the public ownership of her body, her choices, her mistakes. And they chose differently. Kim didn't, because Kim didn't just survive that system. She mastered it. And now, whether consciously or not, she's recreating it. Let's talk about Kanye West again, because this is where his role becomes impossible to ignore. Kanye has repeatedly said he doesn't want North online. He said she's being used. He said the exposure isn't healthy. And people dismissed him. They called him bitter, unstable, controlling. But here's the thing. Kanye understands branding just as deeply as Kim does. And he understands how destructive it can be when a child becomes a public asset. And now that he's largely removed from controlling North's public image, the rollout has accelerated. More TikToks, more glam, more commentary, more controversy. And Kim's response? Silence, deflection, minimization, which tells you everything. Because if Kim truly believed this exposure was harmless, she'd address the criticism head on. She'd set boundaries publicly, she'd slow it down, but she hasn't. Instead, she lets the clips live, lets the debates rage, lets North become a talking point, because controversy keeps North relevant, and relevance keeps Kim relevant too. And this is where the real danger lies. When a child grows up being rewarded for attention, what happens when attention isn't enough anymore? What happens when the applause fades? When the internet turns colder? When the criticism gets sharper? The internet doesn't grow with you. It doesn't soften, it doesn't forgive easily. North's childhood moments aren't just memories. They're digital footprints, permanent ones. And when people say she's just a kid, they're right, which is exactly why this is so concerning. Because kids don't get to consent to being brands. They don't get to understand long-term consequences. They don't get to opt out later. Once the image is out there, it's out there forever. And the saddest part, North doesn't even realize what's happening. She thinks she's being expressive. She thinks she's being funny. She thinks she's being herself. But behind the scenes, a narrative is being built around her. One she didn't ask for, and one she may not want later. And that's what makes this different from a confident kid. This isn't organic, it's structured. This isn't freedom, it's exposure. This isn't just parenting choices, it's legacy management. And if history tells us anything, it's this. When childhood becomes content, the bill always comes due later. And by the time it does, the cameras have usually moved on. So when people ask, why does this feel off? That's why, because we've seen this story before, just never with someone this young. If you made it to the end of this video, you already understand why this conversation matters. So like this video, share it, and subscribe to I Love Gossip for more deep dives, celebrity tea, and stories they don't want you questioning. Because over here, we don't just watch what goes viral, we ask why.